Welcome back, Defenders. It took an extra week, but the United States and NATO has finally confirmed that yes, North Korean troops are inside of Russia to help Russia with their war against Ukraine. This acknowledgement comes after South Korean and Ukrainian intelligence already confirmed this a week ago. So what tipped the CIA off? What confirmed it? And how about North Korean officers in Red Square posing for pictures with tourists while wearing their full-length black Nazi trench coats? Nothing gets past the CIA, guys. They see everything. So what's going on here? U.S. Defense Secretary confirms North Korean troops in Russia. Very serious if they are co-belligerents. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said Tuesday that the U.S. is seeing evidence that Pyongyang has deployed troops to Russia, but that their roles and purpose remain unclear. BS. This is reaching comedic levels. It's so absurd. And I'm going to play for you this clip of a White House journalist asking Press Secretary Kirby, what is America's response to North Korea sending soldiers to the war zone to help the Russians?
John, why not? Why not greenlight the long-range missiles for Ukraine's use, which is Zelensky's #1 ask, as you're sounding the alarm about what could have far-reaching implications if North Korean soldiers go into Ukraine?
Well, for one thing, Jackie, we don't exactly know what these guys are going to do.
What else could they be there for?
We don't know what they're going to do. We don't know if they're going to deploy into combat or not. We don't know if they do and what strength. We certainly don't have a sense of what capability they might be able to bring to the field with them.
We just don't know. Why are there North Korean officers in military uniforms in Red Square posing for pictures with tourists? So I've already explained to you guys, the United States government right now is playing stupid. They're not authorizing long-range strikes. They're not reacting because this is what Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin want. They want people talking about the dangers and threats of World War III, of two nuclear powers going against Ukraine alone. This is rhetoric, this is language that would benefit Donald Trump, who's best friends with Putin and in love with Kim Jong-un. Vote for Trump, he will save the day and prevent World War III. So NATO and the United States is deliberately not reacting, and they're playing stupid. But the election is in 12 days. On November 6th, we will get a reaction. We will get more forceful language. But Donald Trump has to be defeated first. Yesterday, I went to an early voting location here in my home state of Nevada, and I cast my vote for Kamala Harris. So let's get some more updates on these North Korean soldiers. Here's a report that 8 North Korean officers have already been killed in action. This is according to a Chinese mercenary. A Chinese mercenary fighting for Russia claimed that 8 Pyongyang officers were already killed on their first day of deployment to Ukraine. Is this a reliable source? No, but this is still a Chinese national fighting for the Russians, making this claim on camera. North Korean troops exchanged for Russian cash and nuclear know-how, according to Budanov. So here's the number. North Korea will send 500 officers, including 3 generals, to support Russia in exchange for financial aid and nuclear technology. So the bottom 90% of people are referred to by their government as the hostile class, the people who need to be brutally controlled. So the 10,000 foot soldiers or grunts being sent to the war zone, they're never coming back. They basically have been exiled by the Kim family. They are learning things and seeing things and doing things that you're not allowed to know, see, or do in order for the Kim regime to maintain their absolute control over the hostile class. But officers and generals, yes, potentially, these people might be allowed to return. The inner circle, the top 10% of the elite in Pyongyang, more or less they know that their government is a joke and they're one of the poorest countries in the world and everybody outside of North Korea has a higher standard of living, but they're still privileged within their culture and society, so they maintain the structure. For these 500 officers and 3 generals, if they live, some of them will be allowed to return back to the Kim family to give reports. But this is being reported by Yonhap News in South Korea. North Korea has already begun isolating the families of military personnel sent to Russia. On top of that, North Korea hasn't told their people on North Korean state media what's happening. They covered Putin's visit back in June. They covered there's a new military alliance. But as far as North Korean soldiers being sent to Russia to participate in the war, nobody in North Korea knows this because they haven't reported it on North Korean state TV. So the families of the officers are being isolated so they don't defect, so they don't betray the Kim family. If any of these generals or officers being let out of the country choose to defect or betray the Kim family, then their families back in Pyongyang will be arrested, tortured, executed, sent to political concentration camps. It is reported that 3,000 DPRK troops are already stationed at training bases in Russia. The number will reach 10,000 by December. Here we go. According to Yonhap News, Russia is paying 2,000 equivalent US dollars per month for each man. The average monthly salary of a North Korean soldier was estimated at $3 a month. The equivalent, not 3,000, not 300, not even 30. North Korean soldiers make the equivalent of about $3 US a month. Most of the money does not reach the North Korean soldiers or their families. It remains with the state. It remains with the Kim family. This is what I said a week ago. This was my prediction. 10,000 soldiers being sent to Russia. They're making basically what a contract soldier in Russia makes, about $2,000 a month. This is netting Kim Jong-un $20 million a month. $20 million to Vladimir Putin is not a lot of money. But to the impoverished North Korean regime, yeah, giving up 10,000 slaves when you've got 7 million in your military to get 20 million a month in payments, plus a spy satellite, plus a nuclear submarine, plus military technology. The Kim regime is swindling Vladimir Putin right now. The Russians are so desperate. Ukraine's I Want to Live project posts Korean language video message, calls on North Korean soldiers to surrender. So the I Want to Live project makes propaganda videos to convince Russian soldiers to defect or surrender. And they just made their first video in the Korean language. It's up available on the internet. If some impoverished North Korean soldier gets his hands on a smartphone and someone shows him how to use it, potentially they might see this video. So let me share with you what the video says.
북한에서 새로 도착한 전쟁 포로를 수용하기 위해 가까운 장래의 전선의 여러 부문에서 포로가 된 최초의 북한 점령군이 이곳에 도착할 것입니다. 수용소의 전쟁 포로들은 별도의 수면 공간을 갖춘 크고 따뜻하고 밝은 방에 수용됩니다. 수용소의 전쟁 포로들은 하루 3끼의 식사를 받으며 식단에는 고기, 신선한 야채, 빵이 포함됩니다.
This is pretty tempting. If you're a North Korean soldier and you choose to surrender, you'll be given 3 meals a day. Meat and vegetables and bread. This is going to be a better offer than whatever the Russians are feeding you. But there are implications here of having North Korean POWs. We're going to get our first one in the next couple weeks. I guarantee you the Ukrainians are going to start capturing these guys. So these North Korean soldiers who either surrender or are captured, nobody's trading for them. Russia isn't going to exchange any Ukrainian POWs for a North Korean. North Korea doesn't want their own people back. So when a North Korean surrenders or is captured, his identity is going to have to be concealed, his name and his face, because he could have family back in North Korea that will be punished if it's learned that he either defected or was captured. So Russian POWs and North Korean POWs are not going to be mixed. They're not going to mingle. And once these North Koreans start showing up, it's going to get weird. South Korea warns it may send Ukraine weapons after North Korea sends its troops. This is a political process. It's going to take a couple weeks or even a couple months. I do think South Korea is going to amend their law, and they are going to allow for the export of weapons to an active combat zone. But as far as sending troops, they're going to send interrogators. This is an intelligence bonanza if they can capture tens or hundreds or even thousands of North Korean soldiers. Each one of these North Korean men, in exchange for amnesty, they'll get to live in South Korea someday when the war is over, but they're going to get as much information as they can from these guys. What village are they from? What's the condition of the village? Who's in charge of the village? What have you been doing for the last 20 years of your life? What is the current state of the Kim regime? There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of answers the South Koreans would like to get that will be an intelligence boost for the South Koreans once these North Koreans start showing up in POW camps. The other top story from the last 2 days is the BRICS summit currently happening in Russia. Putin faces calls for peace at flagship BRICS summit. President Xi, a key Putin ally, told the summit there must be no escalation of fighting in Ukraine. So this military partnership between the Russians and the Chinese, the Russians were supposed to be the more senior, experienced military power. China has a bigger population, they have a bigger economy. The Russians were supposed to bring expertise on the battlefield to this alliance. And it took the Russians over 2 years to capture the tiny village of Vuhledar. So the Chinese are not impressed. I think they're pretty sick of Putin's war and just looking at the progress on the battlefield. China's wondering after 2.5 years, what are they getting out of this? As far as the other BRICS partners, Indian Prime Minister Modi calls for a quick end to the Ukraine war in his meeting with Putin. So this is the Chinese and the Indians not entertaining any of Russia's propaganda talking points. How NATO's the aggressor with their expansion, Ukraine is full of Nazis, biolabs, the usual BS, and China and India want economic cooperation. They don't really want to help Putin with his imperial wars in Eastern Europe. And India did secure the release of 85 of their citizens from the Russian army. 20 are still waiting to be discharged. Modi of India is basically telling Putin, stop scamming my people. Stop, luring them to Russia with the promise of jobs and then gang pressing them into the military. Indian people are off limits. Chinese people are off limits. If Russia wants to do this to Somalis or people from Sri Lanka or Nepal, these world leaders don't care, but it's all very cynical. And let's think big picture about BRICS, because people experience fear and anxiety when they don't understand something. What the heck is BRICS? What is it supposed to be? And basically, when Putin and the Russians got kicked out of the G8, and the G8 became the G7 is the largest industrial economies that are also democracies. You have to be a democracy, which is why the Chinese don't qualify. And I guess, eventually someday maybe India could join the G7 and become part of that economic cooperation. But BRICS is supposed to be a counterbalance. It's who's being left out. South Africa, Brazil, India, China, and Russia, they're trying to do their own thing. And there's nothing wrong with this, as long as it's just an economic cooperation. The United States, the G7, the European Union, nobody is trying to prevent this. This is not a bad thing. What are the benefits of joining BRICS? economic growth, access to new markets, regional cooperation, reduced dependence on Western powers, that's fine, greater financial independence. But we can be honest here. It's about investment. Why is Cuba trying to join BRICS? Why are all these smaller countries trying to join BRICS? And they want money. They want direct investments from China or Russia or India, the big three, really. And it's, once again, up to each of these countries to just sign bilateral agreements. They're calling it BRICS, but it's still 1v1. Big countries with money and investment are not going to just throw their money away because you were let into the club. And the threat that people who hate the West, they always talk about BRICS forming their own common currency. And Putin wanted to exasperate these fears by showing up with a fake BRICS note. This is what it looks like with the flags of the original 5 on the front, and then the flags of who else wants to maybe join on the back. And this is never going to happen. I'm telling you right now, BRICS is never going to be able to unify behind a common currency because somebody has to be in charge of that currency. There has to be a central bank that regulates the monetary supply. And you can't trust a dictator to be in charge of the monetary supply, even if you're in the same economic cooperation. So the Brazilians are never going to trust the Chinese controlling the flow of the money. The Indians are never going to trust the Russians. These people hate each other. They're willing to cooperate to make money, but the Chinese don't really like the Indians don't really like the Chinese don't really like the Russians don't really like the Chinese. I don't think the relationship between Russia and India is that bad, but I guarantee you these leaders have huge egos and they look down on each other. They don't actually respect one another. And there's constant infighting. Case in point, Turkey has been trying to join the European Union for like over 20 years. I don't think it's going to happen. So Turkey said they wanted to join BRICS. Sounds great. And India is saying no. Because Turkey has a good relationship with Pakistan, and India hates Pakistan, India is blocking Turkey from participating in BRICS events. That's how stupid this economic cooperation is. I hope it goes well for all of them. If it's just about money, a rising tide raises all boats. Free trade, as long as it's somewhat fair trade, is a benefit to everybody around the world. If markets can be made more efficient, if the division of labor, goes across international borders, this benefits everyone, even people living in the European Union or the G7. For fun, what's been my favorite moment of the BRICS summit so far, and it's Foreign Minister Lavrov choosing to pick his nose while on camera, while President Putin is speaking at the summit. So he takes a good 2 seconds inside of his nose, once again on camera, right behind Putin while he's speaking, and then he checks it out to see if it's a good one, and maybe he wants to save it for later. This lady right here from Bahrain is watching him, and she's probably wondering to herself, how did she end up there? According to the Institute for the Study of War, Putin aims to use the BRICS summit to bolster Russia's war efforts in Ukraine. This is ultimately what it's about. Economic cooperation not to benefit their people, not to increase the standard of living of the average citizens of their countries, but to make their militaries more powerful. If you want a more powerful military, you need a more powerful economy. This is the real alliance behind BRICS. It's called CRINCS. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. These are the autocracies around the world that brutally oppress their own people. You have no say in your governments. You have no freedom if you live in one of these 4 countries. And these are the people that want to attack their neighbors, kill them, and steal their stuff. The international rules-based order was set up to stop these people. And they're cooperating. They're, in the case of North Korea and Russia, forming military alliances in which if one of them goes to war, the other one is now treaty bound to assist them. These guys are going to lose. I guarantee you, it's going to take time. I understand everyone's frustrated, but everything has been set in motion. And all four of these countries, probably over the next decade or two, will have a disastrous end. Let's check in on the front lines in Ukraine. Russian assaults slow on 3 fronts as strategic Tetk stabilizes. Because it's now mud season, it's raining, the fields are all bogged down. Russia is starting to slow their attacks on numerous fronts. And the fronts that everyone's talking about the last 2 days, Ukraine has stabilized the situation in Tetk, but Russia is concentrating troops in the town's eastern sector. So the Ukrainian city of Tetk had a pre-war population of about 30,000. This is roughly half the size of Pokrovsk, same size as Avdiivka. And this is where this is located on the map. So the Russians, for almost 2 years, have been trying to take Chasiv Yar. The Russians took Avdiivka earlier this year and are trying to take the hub city of Pokrovsk. But there's another city right here, the Ukrainian town of Tetk. The Russians are now in the city fighting block by block, building by building. Ukraine is doing their best to hold them back, but probably, yeah, Russia's going to eventually take this city and then they're going to move on to the next city. I know this is infuriating for people watching it, seeing Russia advance, but this is a war of attrition. Ukraine is strategically trading fields and forest lines and even small towns to just weaken the Russians. Kill their guys, destroy their equipment, make them spend money, and eventually we need Russia to collapse before this war ends. So we do have a report on the ground in the city of Tetk. This man in the video calls it by its Soviet name. I don't know how to pronounce that, but Zelensky. And he's in the city, and he managed to film this video and get it out. At one point in the video, he is going to show bodies, so I'm going to skip that part of the video. I'll link the whole thing down below. But this is his report from inside the city. Hello, my name is Denis Gordienko. I'm the commander of the assault company. I'm in the city of Tetk. We are now performing the task of clearing the city blocks. But unfortunately, we are paying the price for it. It's very difficult for us. Our command of the 109th Regiment gives us orders that can be achieved, but without backup, they are almost impossible. Now at this moment, I'm inside a 9-story building near the city center. This is what's happening, so we're going to have to skip forward. Our 300th guys are rotting in the basement here. There are a lot of wounded. I'm injured myself, but I can move for now. 109th Regiment, Military Unit 34494, deployed from the city of Horlivka. We fulfill our tasks, and we can fulfill them, but at the moment, we can't fulfill these tasks because I have practically no one to fulfill these tasks. But I will try to fulfill this task nonetheless. To everyone who recognized me, there is no evacuation. We are not getting evacuated from here because the 109th does not have capabilities for evacuation as they've told me. My call sign is Nazaz. To date, I already have 3 contusions. Of these, 2 were serious. A concrete slab fell on me while I was performing a combat mission. I don't know what's wrong with my back, but it's very difficult to move around. Please make this public, but we will still complete our task, and we will win no matter what. Yeah, this man's probably already dead. Let's move on. Russia sets new February deadline to expel Ukrainians from the Kursk region after failing to do it in October. Ukraine invaded Kursk almost 3 months ago, and initially the Russian military was supposed to expel Ukrainians by October. The Russian military failed again, so now they're moving the goalpost, and Putin is saying, for sure by February. No more of our sovereign territory should be occupied by a country we claim doesn't even exist. President Zelensky had a little fun and decided to troll the Russians. During his nightly address, he wore a t-shirt that said, "Make Russia small again." This is the address. He does this every day on his channel. I'll link the video down below if you want to see it for yourself. The back of the t-shirt showed a map of what Moscovia was in 1462, and this is a very appealing message. For the peace and prosperity of Central Asia, for the peace and prosperity of the Caucasus and Eastern Europe, the Russian Empire needs to go away for good. If it was just an economic cooperation with a military for defense, having this be the largest country in the world is a huge benefit to the people. But power just keeps concentrating in the Kremlin, and once a generation, for hundreds of years, the Tsar goes to war and decides he wants to expand his empire, and he wants to kill people and take their stuff. I was really hoping we were past this as a global society, but we're not. And I just don't think it's safe for Russia to control all of these people and all this territory anymore, because they're going to keep doing it again and again until someone stops them. Russia shells the Red Cross office in Donetsk, according to the NGO. The Ukrainian chapter of the Red Cross was shelled and destroyed near this town in Donetsk. Good job, Russia. You do have some military victories on the battlefield. Russian oligarch found dead in Moscow after falling out a window. This happens very frequently. And in fact, it's so frequent, there's a Wikipedia page, Suspicious Deaths of Notable Russians in the Last 2 Years. This guy was a senior energy executive. His name was Mikhail Rogachev, 64. And somebody threw him out a window. If you want, I'll link this Wikipedia page down below. It has a full list of all of the people, high-ranking positions in especially Russia's energy industries. But they keep vanishing, falling out windows, being poisoned, and I'm sure this is all political. This is either Putin getting rid of people he thinks is not entirely loyal to him, or it's internal fighting. Because the FSB and the Kremlin is distracted, this is a good opportunity for people in the private sector to eliminate their rivals. But this is the list of all the mysterious, unexplained deaths of wealthy and important people inside of Russia the last 2 years. I guess this is news, but Viktor Lukashenko announced he's running for re-election. He's going to be re-elected on January 26, 2025 in a obviously rigged election, but he promised 5 or 6 years ago that he wasn't going to run again, and shocker, dictators lie and they never leave office. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. This is actually huge news. Biden approves $20 billion Ukraine loan backed by frozen Russian assets. This is on top of the UK pledging $2.26 billion as a military loan. In total, the G7 plus the European Union is securing a loan for $50 billion to Ukraine. And Ukraine needs, I read a report one time that Ukraine needs about $5 billion in financial assistance every month in order to pay their pensions and keep government services going. This is separate from military needs. This is just civilian. So the G7 promised they were going to do this, and it's actually happening now. How this works is the G7 is loaning Ukraine the money, and the loan will be repaid with interest accumulating on frozen Russian assets. So the compromise with the banks is we're not going to touch the principal, but the interest that's been accumulating the last 2 years on Russia's assets will be used to repay the loan to the G7. So this is free money to Ukraine. This is money that Ukraine desperately needs. And in effect, Russia is now paying to keep Ukraine's government going. We're using Russian money and Russian assets to help fight Russia. This is beautiful. I love it. On top of that, the United Kingdom allocated $155 million for naval coalition to protect Ukraine's ports. Thank you so much to the fantastic people of the UK. Final video I want to share with you is actually a follow-up on this bridge. This bridge connects Kyiv and Irpin, and in the earliest weeks of the war, there were a lot of pictures and videos of Ukrainians trying to evacuate. The Russians destroyed this bridge, and you can see for yourself, for Ukrainians, mostly women and children, in the first week trying to evacuate, they all had to cross the ruins of this bridge on foot. It's been 2 years, and this is what this bridge, this area, currently looks like now. So the Ukrainians built a brand new bridge, obviously, but they left the ruins of the bridge the Russians destroyed, and they turned it into a memorial. And they even left that van that fell down there. They kept everything as it was, as a reminder. Hopefully someday, guys, we live in a world where even having this memorial here isn't even necessary anymore, but it's important not to forget. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.